Parish orphans and retrogrades. Yo, Parish orphans and retrogrades, got a special episode for you today. We're going to be clearing up through the dialectical method, that which gave birth to real philosophy in Athens, clearing up some of the questions surrounding the John Paul II pontificate. And with me, friend of the channel, our good friend, Jordan. What's up, Jordan? How are you today?
What's up, man? All good. Can't complain.
Yeah, you're looking summery. I'm feeling summery here. We've been out there working on the deck, me and Gabriel, stripping all the rotten planks, working on the new ones. And it's funny because I'm thinking of the shows by day, and I get to go and do them at night. I hope everyone's having a lovely summer so far. It's great to work out in the sun and to touch grass, as they say. You know what I mean? Keeps you real.
That Mississippi heat is no joke, though.
It's ridiculous. Like, because you got to strip the planks, you got to strip the old ones, and the more rotten they are, the easier it's to do, obviously. But sitting there and you crowbar them out, and then you put the new planks in, and sometimes you have to saw to make sure they work, they're the right thing, and then you got to impact gun them in with deck screws. And the worst part, and of course you're hauling all the wood before and between the backyard and the front yard. The worst part where you just sit there and the heat beats down on you is when you're crowbarring out the old deck boards. So it's intense some of these days, but it's not much better in Georgia where you're at. So
no, yeah, for sure. But I've been going to the pool. We've been having a pretty laid back summer. I'm a teacher, public school teacher, for those who don't know. So I just get to kind of hang out,
Yeah, it's the best schedule, teaching class. You feel like it makes you feel in a good way like a big kid again to have your summer off. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and then you get like the check comes and you're just like, I didn't do anything. Like, this is sweet,
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to be on a 12-month pay schedule for working 9 months of the year. It's really, really lovely. Being a teacher, I think, is the best job there is. For still for my money. But and that's a big part of what we do on the channel, and you are part of the team for this channel and help us to do a number of things, but one of them's come up with good show topics, and a lot of it's just through the conversations that you and I have as friends. And so I think this one wasn't planned for a long time. You asked 2 days ago, hey, could I ask you some philosophy questions? And I was like, yeah. And then the next day, which was yesterday, you just started asking away, and I'm like, yeah, this is good. And then I'm like, this is really important for people's understanding of where John Paul II was errant in his philosophy, and it had influences, a close kissing cousin in his theology, but where he wasn't, people have been kind of trained to say, trads are trained to say, oh, phenomenology is just bad. Who's really in phenomenology, it's wicked, it's the source of all the errors. That's not quite true. It's close to true, but we're going to be ironing all that out today. Before people get too into the show topic, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We're chasing down 70,000 subscribers. It's been a slog, but we got the numbers moving again. If you want to support the channel more than just liking and subscribing, then go to Rules for Retrogrades Locals and become a $12 a month or more supporter today, and you'll get the Parish Orphan Patron Pack. It's all good, man. So we're gonna get right into it. So how would you I'm gonna let you, in a way, today, Jordan, lead the discussion, because it's a a dialectical thing where the trajectory is all in questioning, and we'll try to keep it kind of simple and move forward once we've given a simple enough answer for your liking. It's all up to you.
Sweet. Yeah. So real quick, just wanted to give JP2 some shout outs, because I saw some people already spurging in the comments before the show even started. Like, why would you criticize a saint? Like, so first, just Tim has done multiple shows, saying that like Augustine is wrong on like sexual ethics, and Alphonsus as well, right, Tim?
Not outright wrong, but undeveloped and things like that. Yeah. Augustine definitely had philosophical shortcomings, which is why, if he'd had access to Aristotle the way Thomas did, then the church would have had basically another Thomas, but almost 1,000 years earlier. So there's definitely shortcomings for sure.
Yeah, like critiquing saints is not a huge deal, like saints are infallible in terms of their thoughts, or their systems or whatever. But obviously, he's a canonized saint, and I believe canonizations are infallible personally. So he won the game. Like, that's the whole point of life, right? Is to be a saint. So there's nothing, no malice, like necessarily like malice in terms of like the person from me to him.
No hate. They're just not infallible. They're not infallible.
So and I think people are already like springing on the comments like, why would you critique a saint? It's like, that's it's okay to do,
Well, I mean, here's the thing, bro. There are lots of disagreements between Thomists and Molinists, and you have a lot of saints on either side. You're gonna, I know some of this show's kind of for anyone of goodwill that's probably Catholic, but basically this is a show just for people of goodwill. And I'm just, as I often answer, like, the principle of non-contradiction is going to be the gadfly. The gadfly is you can't be on both sides of an issue and both of you be right. So if you pick a saint who's a Molinist and a saint who's a Bonyesian Thomist, you can't both be right. That doesn't mean you're not saints. And on that particular issue, the church hasn't even said which ones are right. We know who's probably right, but we don't know exactly how. So it's a good thing to bear in mind here. I don't know whether or not canonizations are infallible or not, but that's not what we're seeking to address here. We're just seeking to address why, in many ways, John Paul II is the sane man's, the sanest iteration of the spirit of Vatican II. The most conservative that you can get, where you really are rightly extrapolating, interpolating, but then extrapolating, I think rightly, what the spirit of Vatican II was. You have to have this idea that we can't do, Thomas qua Thomas. His philosophical influences were, he says Thomas, but also Max Scheler, not a strict Thomist. And I mean, these names might not mean something to everyone, but as a philosopher, when you hear the names I'm going to read out that JP2 himself called his closest, most dear conspirators in the philosophical world, to whom his works would be, a footnote or an endnote. Max Scheler is not a straight up Thomist. Thomas is, but when you say, well, we need to cross Thomas Aquinas with the writings of Joseph Marischal, who expressly was an NSJ, who said we need half Thomas, half Immanuel Kant. And that whole worldview is called transcendental Thomism. Really, really wrong. And from those influences, from Thomas to Max Scheler, to Joseph Marischal to Edmund Husserl, which is where you get the phenomenology. And that he can't have gotten everything right, because either Thomas is all right, what I believe, 99% right or better, or those other three guys that are bringing in German idealism. Husserl, sort of an idealist in some sense himself, a German phenomenologist, Max Scheler, and Joseph Marischal. You're saying that there's shortcomings with Thomas Aquinas. And Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI, said it outright. We were just bored. Thomas Aquinas is boring, so we started bringing in more German thought. So you have to disagree if you call yourself a Thomist And you're going to have to get over, I'm not talking to you, Jordan. I'm talking the childish Spurg in chat or the childish listener. It's good to have childish faith when you're running to Jesus. It's not good to be childish or puerile when it comes to the principle of non-contradiction, parsing what is philosophically coherent from what's philosophically incoherent. You got to put your big boy pants on and realize that if JP2 had the wrong philosophical influences, like I would say more than even Husserl, I would say Max Scheler and Joseph Marischal, then there's going to be a cost to pay when you look at the bottom line.
Yeah, I think you equated it to math yesterday, right? Small mistakes in the beginning lead to big mistakes at the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so do you mind just like trying to explain to us what phenomenology is? How would you define it?
Good. Yeah. So phenomenology is in a nutshell. Husserlian phenomenology is a system of bracketing. The word he uses is epoche. And what you're attempting to do is to bracket, like, in a word, the physical world. And what you want to do, like, the first observation, the grounding assumption for Husserlian phenomenology is like, when you're looking out through your eyes, you're looking using your sense impressions, and you're seeing what you're seeing. You're not seeing a picture of yourself seeing it, unless you see like a video camera of your profile, or maybe you from the back. Does my head really look like that? You know, people will say. Phenomenology is trying to see yourself seeing the world, whereas in reality we only see the world. And this immediately smacks of Kantian and Hegelian German idealism, where you're talking about the difference between perception, your five senses, and the unity of apperception, which is Kant's tricksy term for self-consciousness. While you include yourself in the totality of what you're taking in. And that's not what you do. Look at your field of vision right now, Jordan. You're looking at what you're looking at. You're not in your own field of vision. Right. And Husserl said he had a noble goal. He wasn't a Christian. He was a Jew, but he had a noble goal. He wanted to rescue Aristotelian sort of moderated realism from what was going on in the early 20th century. And so he said, look, we have to just reincorporate the self into the totality of our sense impressions. That's, broadly speaking, phenomenological. And I want to talk about another thinker that I think is not as influential on JP2 directly, but I think was influenced by Husserl, who is a council father named Bernard Lonergan, who was a philosopher more than a theologian. And I feel like even though he didn't directly influence JP2, the influence might be more profound than Husserl alone. But first off, is that a sort of adequate explanation? Does that sort of get you to where you might be able to start recognizing some of the elements of John Paul II personalism when you start saying, let's reincorporate the self into what we're looking at?
For sure. Would you say that phenomenology is like also looking at the subjective experience?
Yep. Yes. It's incorporating it in a non-relativistic way into what, and I mean, this is basically Aquinas's like epistemology and Aristotelian moderate realism, where the representation in your mind, you have your five senses, right, that are feeding your intellect information. And then what it uses is what's called phantasms that are representations of the thing. It's not the thing actually like lodged in your brain. Like if you're thinking of a screw, it's not a screw in the middle of your mind. That's realism. That's Platonism. And it's kind of absurd. But it's a real phantasm of the thing, and it's a representation of the thing. And Husserl says he wants to return to this moderate Aristotelian realism of the world. So that by itself, in a non-relativistic way, at least at the start, incorporates the subject and the object together. After all this Cartesian nonsense where you say subject-object split and all that. So just as long as you can see, because JP2 doesn't take it to a technical new domain, he kind of simplifies Husserl And I would say he sort of fruitifies it. He makes it an even fruitier version of that. But first I want to talk some about Lonerganian bracketing. He uses what Husserl does when he brackets for his phenomenological system is he says, we're going to just bracket the sense impression alone. You know, for the people out there like the determinists, biological determinists, or even psychological determinists that say we are basically just animals. Mm-hmm. We are nothing more than our appetites. You know, there's a Jesuit named Maurice Blondel who makes a lot of liberal theology, but he makes a good point. It's like, well, what about the exercise of the martyrs? If we are just the sort of vector sum of all of our appetites, mm-hmm. then what about all the people fasting for like 60 days? What about the martyrs who choose to not use the five senses and the five sensory impressions to continue to survive, which is the sort of basic animal orientation? So there's a similar thing with Husserl happening where it's like, well, let's rescue from the early 20th century and all the psychologizing and relativizing. Mm-hmm. Let's incorporate this sort of subject back into phenomenology. And that's before we get to the insight philosophy. It's called insight philosophy of Bernard Lonergan, who was a Vatican II Canadian council father.
Do you want to get into Lonergan now and explain, like, why do you think he maybe not directly influenced JP2, but like what shades of his work you see in JP2's work?
Yeah, sure. So this is basically Husserl, but it's sort of Catholicized, and I think it makes a more powerful point. And I don't agree with most of Lonergan's theology, but it makes a more powerful point of Husserl's phenomenology and epistemological leanings. So it goes like this. Imagine Archimedes, who famously, wanted to describe mathematically what was going on with convexity, I guess, with the overflowing bathtub. He looked at the overflowing bathtub, say 10,000 times, right? And that's mainly a visual set of impressions. And he saw the same thing happening 10,000 times. Those 10,000 times, he's trying to figure out what exactly is going, what happens when the dip occurs and then the water starts overflowing. And he's unable to describe it mathematically 10,000 times. And then let's just say the 10,001st, he has this is what Lonergan says anyway. He has this famous eureka moment where he says, now I can describe it, to modify it mathematically. I get it. I understand. And he, Archimedes becomes Archimedes by it being able to sort of reconcile traditional mathematics with geometry by looking at the bathtub overflowing. So what Lonergan says, using Husserl's method of epoche or bracketing, is he says, let's bracket, let's compartmentalize all of the sensory data that Archimedes like ascertained from watching this thing the first 10,000 times. Something new, something phenomenologically new is going on the 10,001st time that is not reducible to input, if like an input-output machine. Right. Because when he actually comes away with Eureka, there's a new thought. And the biological reductionists of the early 20th century and late 19th century can't account for human insight, can't account for Archimedes' Eureka. The psychological determinists can't account for it. And there is something that is on the other side of human beings, what Lonergan calls their pure desire to know. You want to know, you think about it, and you're not just coming up with what you put into the machine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So then just like a follow-up question, that how would the Aristotomists be able, because he said the psychological determinists and the biological determinists would have an answer to that. What would the Aristotomist answer be to that 10,001st time new thought coming in?
I think they'd be okay with it. The agent intellect, this is what it does. There are the three operations of the intellect. For Thomas, it's not just apprehension. There's judgment as well. I mean, for Thomas, when you're doing epistemology, you have to make use of the the phantasms that we spoke about. You form a physical phantasm. Like, close your eyes right now and try to think of a 6-inch screw. That's all I'm thinking of because we've been using these. That's actually a phantasm in your mind where you picture it. And it's a representation that is really there to be grasped by your mind. And then there are other operations besides just apprehension, where you're sort of creating either visual or auditory phantasms, and you're going to do something about them. But then you get into the other two operations of the intellect for Aquinas. The second one is judgments. So judgments are, hold on, I'm just going to get a technical definition since I wasn't planning on going, but this is a good contrast point. Okay, so apprehension just means you're dealing with your sense impressions. The intellect grasps what a thing is without affirming it or denying it. You get a concept or kind of universal idea. Then judgment is the second operation, where the intellect joins or separates concepts by affirming them or denying them. Now you're getting more complex than just thinking through what your phantasms have presented to you. The result is a proposition. This is the beginning of propositional logic. Something is either true or false propositionally. Man is rational. The tree is green. Something like that. And then when you get into the third operation of the intellect, reasoning or ratiocination, it becomes discursive. And here's where the intellect moves from known judgments to new judgments. Like, so if we reason, and we don't have to go too deep on this because this is just, Aquinas would say, the syllogism. Socrates is a man, all men are mortal. Thus, your intellect does it for you, jumps from judgment to reasoning or ratiocination automatically. All men, Socrates must be mortal. Yeah. So that's the syllogism, and it involves in a very complex way all of your sense impressions.
Yeah, because I've just gone down this rabbit hole of like watching not JP2 himself, but just like people who like talk about JP2, Christopher West, these type of folks, and they tend to just like, the reason I ask it is they tend to minimize the scholastic Aristotomist view, or like they tend to say like Thomas, one of them even said like Thomas dealt with the objective, but he never dealt with the subjective. But it seems to me what you're saying is that he did, especially like through the phantasms and all that you're talking about, right?
Absolutely. Who said that? Christopher West?
No, that was so actually it was a couple, again, these are older videos, so I don't know if they've changed their mind, but there's actually Tim Flanders said that he talked to a Thomist, and that the Thomist said that Thomas never deals with the subjective outright.
Yeah, see, that's wrong. I mean, because that's categorically wrong. That's a category error. Like when you're talking about anthropology, epistemology, you're talking about subjects. Now, Thomas doesn't lean into it in what today would be known as like a personalist way. So he doesn't talk about what it feels like. But what you and I are trying to do is bridge the gap for people between, okay, JP2 had these influences that were not Catholic. I think Husserl's the most benign. Early in phenomenology. I think he did his dissertation on it. Then he had Max Scheler, and then he had Joseph Marischal, the transcendental Thomist, who tried to cross Thomas with Kant. I think that's the most Thomas Aquinas that JP2 actually had. I don't know how much of an influence of strict Thomism he had. I think he learned most or all of his Thomism through the Jesuit transcendental Thomism of the Kantian Thomist of Joseph Marischal, which is deeply problematic.
One of his dissertations was under Gary Grew-Lagrange, correct? I believe maybe even his first.
Yeah, or a dissertation or something. Yeah, for sure. But theology, right? Wasn't it theology?
It might be. So yeah, this is where people understand that I'm not an expert at this. That I'm just a guy who watches YouTube videos. So, do we want to get into personalism?
Yeah. So, hopefully, people can see. Let's get into personalism because this is where it gets fruity. I don't think I don't think Husserl is deeply anathema to modified realism, Aristotelism. And I usually say Aristotle more than Thomas, because Thomas is doing a lot of curating. There's a lot of originalism in his thought when it comes to taking Aristotle's metaphysics and adding this whole aspect of essence to the doctrine of being that Aristotle had. But when it comes to ethics, which is, I think, really where Christopher West is going to sharpen his sword, or he thinks he's going to, against Thomism or Aristotelianism, Thomas is really just giving us Aristotle's ethics. So I think, like, when people say, oh, it's bad that JP2 was a phenomenologist, I'm like, I think it's actually less pernicious that he was influenced by a sort of Lonerganian Husserlian epistemology than by transcendental Thomism. And I think I've thought about it some since yesterday, and I'm like, well, I think the Max Scheler and the Joseph Marshall influences are far more pernicious. And I think it's far more pernicious that when we say, well, JP2 was a Thomist mixed with a phenomenologist, and Thomism is the objective component. Even this is like crass Cartesianism. The Thomism is the objective component, and the phenomenology component is the subjective component. I think that's what people are doing. And here's why that's wrong. The phenomenology is anything but all bad. What's really bad is thinking that Thomism can cross with Kantianism, this idea, this school of thought called transcendental Thomism that he got from Scheler and Marshall. So that's really bad. And because I think you can take a Husserlian or even a Lonerganite approach to this is pretty kind of a nifty way to prove things. You know, what I went through with Archimedes and the Eureka, which is really emblematic of that whole field of epistemology known as phenomenology, and say this is useful. This is a useful tool to show, kind of to prove by bracketing all other possible propositions, that there is something new that's happening when a human being has what Lonergan calls an insight. And it's not an animal, and propositional thought is geared toward having insights. And it's like the spark of God in us. Yeah, animals don't have these. So that I like that more than the view of, well, you need this other stuff for Thomas to have like a subjective grounding, to have a proper, the objects and subjects. That's really wrong. And so I think where JP2 went with it is like, I don't know, how would you define personalism, JP2 personalism? Does he give a tight definition in Love and Responsibility? I don't actually know I know the flavor. I don't know exactly what the philosophy, because it's so loosey-goosey, would be.
Yeah. Again, he's very wordy, and I just tend to watch YouTube videos on my spare time. But from I want to be careful here, because I'm not citing JP2 himself. I'm citing people who tend to agree with him, and like Usual Suspect, Christopher West, Jason Everett, these type of folks. I think what they would agree with or say is that like personalism begins with the main subject as the person, right? Dr. Larry Chapp said this about the Vatican II fathers, not about JP2 himself, but he said the project, which I think is connected to this, was to out-humanist the humanist. Right. So like we're gonna do humanism better than you, and eventually we'll tie it back to Jesus as Lord. I don't know, how does that land with you?
I think that's accurate. Like, I think that's accurate. I think that's an apt way to put it by Larry Chapp. But weren't you saying something like yesterday you were talking about Christopher West, and you were telling me that he thinks like, look, if we want to evangelize the average person out there, instead of going through books 2, 3, 4 of the Nicomachean Ethics, or going through any of Thomas's approach to Aristotelian ethics, wouldn't it be better if we just said, hey, have you ever been like used in a relationship before? How did that feel? Was that good or bad? Wasn't there something like?
Well, so what it was is I was thinking back about how I came into the faith, because, you know, like I said, I have summer, so I have time to think. And so I'm just thinking of like, you know, because I guess it was 2016, like summer 2016. So it's like 10 years reverting back to the faith. So I was thinking like, okay, so what was it that kind of, and it was just like YouTube and podcasts. And back then there was really no trads online. So
Yeah.
What they would say was things like, yeah, like the premise would be like, have you ever been used, or like, you know, like struggling with sins that like, you know, college guys struggle with, right? Like, don't you feel shame after something like that? And like, again, I wasn't that open to like believing in a God right away, but that did spark in me like, yeah, like there is something wrong, you know, like I do want to feel like, don't you want to feel fully loved in a relationship? And it's like, yes, I do want that. So it did kind of crack open the door, these guys to you know, different like arguments for the existence of God, et cetera, et cetera. But it did start with my subjective experience. So I do think there's something valuable there to starting with the person. Just because I like, again, this is me even doing personalism or phenomenology, because I like, this is a term that people use all the time in college. I went to a really liberal college, but like through my lived experience, it's something that has helped me, you know?
Let me give you, I'm just looking it up. I think this is a GPT definition. It says personalism is a philosophical view that the person is a fundamental reality of ethics, society, culture, possessing an intrinsic dignity that can never be reduced to mere object or means, which is, that's definitely there in the Nicomachean ethics. That's definitely, that idea is represented. For John Paul II, personalism is not a rejection of Thomism, but a development of it. And see, here's that this is where it gets dangerous when you're thinking, because anything that is added, I'm going to put scare quotes on it. People that are listening to this can't see me, but I'm saying added to Thomas, that's not properly added, that, you know, that is already there. You're either doubling up on it and being redundant, or two times the amount of sugar or salt or whatever in your recipe, or you're adding some, you know, that's what happens if you're making a pumpkin pie. I did this last fall. You're making a pumpkin pie and you forget you already put the salt in. Then you put the salt in, you have twice the amount of salt. And I think that's to make it real plain for people what's going on, because Thomas did account for the human subject in his anthropology and in his epistemology. And so when you think you're developing it by adding more personality, subjectivity, identity into it, more that we would associate with relativism, and you're going to get double the helping of it. JP2 integrates the metaphysics of St. Thomas Aquinas, which I don't think he ever touched the metaphysics. I don't even know what that means, with the phenomenological analysis of human experience. The key principles of JP2's personalism include the human person possesses inherent dignity. This is what we were talking about yesterday, Jordan. That's everywhere in Thomas. Right. So though you say, okay, this is how I'm developing Thomas Aquinas, we need to start by saying something Thomas never says. That's what you mean. And when you say everybody has dignity, every person has worth simply by being a person, not because of intelligence, usefulness, health, or achievements. This dignity is grounded ultimately in being created in the image of God. This is everywhere in Thomas Aquinas. You see what I'm saying? It was my suspicion is being confirmed that this is problematic.
I think the J2P2 guys, as you call them, they would say like maybe that it wasn't presented to them in that way, right? Like I know we keep harping on Christopher West, but he's just the recent guy I've been watching. He said like, you know, church teaching was presented to me like imagine like handing a Baltimore catechism to someone, you know, and just like, here it is, follow the rules, right? But so like the JP2 thing is like, again, this is again his view is do you want a fulfilling life? Like, do you want to be fully loved? Do you want that feeling? And we'll walk you there slowly but surely. Not just like, hey, this is the answers to the test in the back of the book. And I think that's what again, I know I'm super oversimplifying this, but like I think that's what even like Ratzinger and them were saying, like, oh yeah, like this the answers in the back of the book, we're tired of doing this theology. Let's you know, let's add some spice and like whatever extra salt into it and stuff. But you're saying if you have to be very careful messing with this stuff, right? Because then you can end up with the wrong answers.
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't think it's oversimplifying at all. I think it's absolutely mathematically correct. Even to go back to my pumpkin pie analogy, if you put in salt or any ingredient and then you forget that you put it in, you forgot that you put it in, you're going to double up on it and you're going to throw the careful balance of any recipe, any pumpkin pie recipe off. You can put in a little extra sugar. You know, some people like that way. You can put in a little bit extra of the spices, but you can't double any ingredient, any one ingredient, especially salt. And when, I mean, this is how it's always presented. That's why I like this Chat GPT. What is personalism? It's not a technical topic. And I certainly don't think there are technical serious flaws with phenomenology. So I'll kind of defend Husserl and Lonergan philosophically, not Lonergan's theology. But when you're leaning this hard into, okay, I'm going to develop Thomas's system, and they're like, number one point, human being possesses inherent dignity. You just added in the salt because the salt's already there in Thomas, and now you're adding a second helping of salt, thinking it wasn't in there before, thinking you needed to touch on human dignity. And we'll get to the specific problematics that we were talking about in a sec. But the second thing he says is a person is subject, not merely an object. Now, this is another problem because it's the salt thing all over again. Thomas, of course, knows a person's he doesn't put it in the gay Cartesian way, but Thomas knows a person is a subject, not just an object. And it's central to Thomas's anthropology, just as inherent human dignity is. So that's two double ups. We have a double, and they're kind of the same thing. You have a double up on impersonalism, on inherent dignity. You have a double up now in saying, well, Thomas didn't seem to know a person's a subject, not just an object. Number three, a person fulfills himself through free and truthful action. That's just, I see where personalism gets off the rails right away. Thomas knows that. I mean, action theory is my thing. That's what I was doing a dissertation on. It's the sovereign domain of Thomas. So to imply that each of these first three things is not already there in spades in Thomism is wrong. So those are problems. Now 4 and 5, maybe these are what's actually new, but you just doubled up on salt 3 different times with dignity, action theory, and humans a subject. And now maybe 4 and 5, you get more truly mixed with Thomism, which I think these are bad on their own. I'm not saying these are in Thomas. Number 4 is the person is inherently relational. Yes, because of his relation to God, but you know as well as I do that the J2P2 personalist guys mean inherently relational to other people. And that is going to add in a real dangerous relativistic component. And that is not there. For the first ingredient, number 4, out of the ones we've mentioned, they're not getting doubled up from Thomas. That comes from JP2's adding that spice in himself, and it's bad. Inherently relational, not in the way you're saying. And number 5, the personalistic norm. JP2's best known formulation is the person is a good toward which the only proper and adequate attitude is love. Yeah, but here's the thing. You take all of those 5 ingredients, 3 of them were doubled up after you didn't know you got the ingredients from Thomas, and the latter 2 are kind of fruity and they're from him, JP2 himself. I don't really think the problem is phenomenology. I think the problem is this just sounds like, what does the red pill say about women? The whole world is constructed to make them feel warm and fuzzy and good about themselves in the Matrix. You know, I think that's kind of the JP2 world, and he's redefining dignity. Dignity is what always feels good, and what feels good or feels fuzzy to the JP2 personalist is what must be the right thing. They're really supplanting Aristotelian ethics when you get down to it. They seem to be supplanting Aristotelian ethics with what feels good. And there's an important Aristotelian answer to this that I'll give in a second. But do you agree with that or disagree with that characterization first off? Because you know more.
No, absolutely. And I kind of wanted to go into just a concrete issue, if you don't mind, like a concrete example that we spoke about on the phone yesterday. So again, if you guys want to look it up, I think this is so Christopher West and Pints with Aquinas did like a 6-part series, you know, going over love and responsibility. and I think it's episode 1 or episode 2. So Christopher West is describing his experience trying to conceive his their third child, right? And so they've been trying for years on end, and his wife is only interested in like the marital embrace only in the times that she is like fertile, you know. So like the NFP app would say, like, you know, if you want to have kids, this is the time. And Christopher West said that he was feeling used, you know, during this time period. And his wife also, again, because they're so into, this is all they study, you know, they're like the heads of the Theology of the Body Institute. She also came to that same conclusion, and they had like a conversation about it. And their way to, like, I guess, stop the issue was to say, the wife said, hey, Chris, even though like I'm, you know, in the mood tonight, but I feel like I've been using you just like I'm using you just to get pregnant, just to have a kid. And for that reason, let's not have the marital embrace tonight. And we'll just, for me to show you that I'm loving you fully as a person instead of, you know, using you. Before you speak, I just want to say, like, to me, like at that moment, it came to me like, man, like this stuff can lead to scrupulosity. He didn't mention the word sin, but like using another person, it just sounds like a sin. So it really can lead to that. And we were talking about how just this topic in general, like, you know, Catholic sexual ethics, people get super weird about, but scrupulosity can come from both sides. You've spoken on the trad side a good amount with Will Nolan and past episodes, but this seems one from the John Paul II side. So how does that land with you, and how would you, you know, just decipher all that?
I'd say it's really wrong. It's bad philosophy. Mm-hmm. And when you start with bad philosophy, you're going to come to the wrong conclusion, and you're going to call up, down, and down, up. So assuming, because I trust you, you're a really good characterizer of these things. You'll say, do a show on this because so-and-so said this. I go check it. It's exactly what you said. Some people, it's not that way, but I'll say this. I do trust you. I haven't looked this video up myself, but because I have so much inherent trust, I'll say, look, take you at your word. To say that, as Chris West did, that to use, if you want to do the right thing, according to Aristotle and Thomas, you have to do the right thing for the right reason. And you have to do the right thing for the right reason in the right way at the right time. But those are kind of subsumed into the latter. So if Christopher West and his wife wanted to do it, the right thing is a good thing to do as a married couple for the right reason, you know, procreation, the classical right reason, the teleologically right reason, not just the ergonomically right reason. We'll discuss that in a second. Then there is literally no way to do it in a wrong way. To use someone is slang. Oh, you used me. That means you used like a hammer like a wrench, or a wrench like a hammer. You used me for something that I'm not ergonomically fit for. And or you might have used me ergonomically correctly, but you did so with the wrong end in mind, with the wrong end. But literally, if Christopher West, and again, I hate talking about other people's like sex, but
this is Jake. Once you start talking about John Paul II, this is what this is the can of worms that gets opened. Yeah, no,
it is. This is what's wrong with personalism. It's BS. It's bullshit. It's wrong. They assume wrongly that Thomas doesn't inherently act on anthropology, ethics, and epistemology, the three sort of human-centered branches of philosophy, as if all humans have dignity. Wrong. So you just doubled up on this touchy-feely version of dignity and a sort of fake version of dignity that you doubled up on. Two, you're doubling up on the idea that the person's a subject because you didn't think it was contained there, and the idea that a person fulfills himself through free and truthful action. Well, in this case, those are three wrong assumptions, and here's the wrong conclusion it's going to lead to. That's why I like applied philosophy. Right. They literally were together, came to put their two minds, Chris West and his wife, to this philosophical conundrum, and they came to the wrong solution, and together they thought it was right. They're like, my wife wanted to do it because she wanted a baby, and when you're doing the right thing for the proper reason, for the final cause or the telos, fittingly, teleologically correctly, then you can never use someone. So they literally, it's like telling someone that they did the right thing for the right reason at the right time in the right manner, and they still did the wrong thing. That's an impossibility. And then what it led them to do, this kind of absurdism, it's a reductio, is to not do it that night, not do it when she was fertile, even though she wanted to, for the right subjective reason, for the right objective reason. They might have one fewer kids because of this. Or I don't know. I don't want to get into assessing whatever, but that is a wrong conclusion.
Sure.
But they were both in the mood. They wanted to, they wanted to use the act teleologically correctly. And because they doubled up on, you're stripping away my dignity. They doubled up on this subjectivity component. They doubled up on our action should be totally free. It shouldn't be conditioned by an ordering to the good or so. But it's like they're saying that if you order your actions to the right telos, that you're acting like a slave. Isn't that kind of what he told her? Like, you're just doing this and we're kind of being slaves to your cycle. It's like, but that's what nature wants you to do.
Yeah, I don't think he used that wording, but it was just, I think the wording was more feeling used. And I think she was the one that opened the conversation. But I think I could see people, I imagine people saying already, like, because I've heard this, that Chris West is not a good interpreter of JP2, but he's certainly a popular interpreter of JP2, so this is something that's permeating like Catholic culture, like ascension prayer. We were talking about this yesterday. Like, so much of his thought is still like perennial in a lot of these guys' minds, like the quote unquote Catholic Inc. people, they're all greatly influenced by him,
Yeah, the robots, they're the J2P2 robots.
Yeah.
And it's wrong. And that I don't, the stuff wrongly assumes that you don't have enough sugar, enough salt, enough pumpkin pie seasoning or whatever it is in there. And so you doubled up on it and it led you to the wrong conclusion. And I would say that I'd do you one better and give another applied example, the example of the 1997 revision to the Catechism of the Catholic Church that oddly enough, JP2 ordered just 3.5 years after he issued the first, the second universal catechism in the whole history of the church, 450 years after the Catechism of the Council of Trent. And he goes through all that, has Ratzinger and I'm forgetting the other Northern European who helped Ratzinger put it together. I'll remember in a second. And they go to all that work. And immediately, 3.5 years later, and you still need to look this up. I always say it, I never do. He's like, I need to revise what I just did on the death penalty. And you get the 97 revision to the death penalty that has an undeniable mathematical error in it. There is an error in the 97 catechism revision to the death penalty. And we can talk about that in a second too. And that comes directly, expressly from the assumption that Thomas Aquinas didn't consider persons as subjects and didn't consider that everyone had dignity. And that's just, it's idiotic. But what he says about the death penalty, it actually ends up reducing to by basically the premises that JP2 is using. He's advising a kind of murder. So I don't know what the easiest way to jump into that is. I've raised this when I debated Trent Horn on the death penalty, but I did want to raise it again now that this, in a totally different applied ethical circumstance, out of sex now we're talking about the kind of scrupulosity is your term for it. I think that works well. That it creates in the realm of marital sex, it creates this scrupulosity of dignity that is wholly unnecessary, wholly counterproductive in the realm of does a just state bear what the Bible, St. Paul, St. Augustine, St. Thomas had always called the prerogative to kill a guilty accused, to intend to put to death a guilty accused. And the whole church with one voice had always said, yes, of course.
Mhm.
But and actually, Thomas Aquinas expressly says you're preserving the dignity of the guilty accused when you put him to death, because you're holding him accountable. You're giving him a kind of special time on death row to consider his sins and consider repentance. And the numbers really bear this out, by the way,
Mhm.
that people that go to death row end up repenting 30 to 40% of the time. People that just live the rest of their lives in prisons almost never do.
Mhm.
But so it's a scrupulosity of dignity, and JP2 just outright denies Thomas. He says, if the state ever puts a guilty accused to death, it is destroying not just his body or his life, but his dignity as well.
Do you mind if I read from it?
Yeah.
All right. So it says something about, so the church traditional, it says, the church's traditional teaching, and this is where it starts to quote, does not exclude recourse to the death penalty when this is the only practicable way to defend the lives of human beings effectively against the aggressor. And then it says, then added new language explicitly narrowing when that would apply, given modern states' capacities to incapacitate offenders to detention. And this is, again, quoting the catechism, without depriving him of the possibility of redeeming themselves. So there's that human dignity piece. And then he says, the cases where this is truly necessary are very rare, if not practically non-existent.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which is deeply wrong. Deeply wrong. And I'll walk us through it now. But I just want to remind everyone, when you and I have talked about it 2 days in a row, but remind the listener who's listening to this for the first time that this is deeply informed by the doubling up of salt, ingredient A, sugar, ingredient B, and say pumpkin pie spice, ingredient 3, that JP2 was assuming wasn't already baked into the ingredients of the pie by having Aquinas there. He thought Aquinas doesn't have subjectivity considered. Aquinas doesn't have dignity of each person considered. Aquinas doesn't have an action theory, which is absurd. Action theory comes from Aquinas. So I'm just doing that reminder. Can you reread the first line of that? Is that the 97 Catechism revision?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, I got it from like a AI thing, but I can quote the part. So the AI says, the rewritten text tightened the threshold considerably. It now said the church's traditional teaching, and then this is the quote, does not exclude recourse to the death penalty when this is the only practicable way to defend the lives of human beings effectively against the aggressor, end quote. And then I can continue if you want.
No, that's perfect. So ever since I debated Trent Horn on this, I've been looking for a succinct way to put it. And I finally came up with it yesterday when you and I were on the phone, Jordan. So it's this way. For all of the 2,000 some odd years of salvation history after Jesus, the Christian era, the church has taught, before JP2, before this 97 Catechism revision, with one voice, una voce, right, that there are 2 times when it's licit for a human being to kill another human being. One is a time where the killing of one human being by another can be intended. The second time is a time when you're allowed to kill another human being, but it's not intended. Now, people have to, before people in the chat start spurging out, they have to understand that intention is a term of art for philosophers. So column A, the time when the church, before JP2, had always taught it's fully licit for one human being to intend to kill another, is when the prerogative of the state, this comes directly from St. Paul, and even Jesus sort of says it to Pontius Pilate, the prerogative of the state is the power to cast judgment, is given from God to the just ruler, whether it's a single ruler or multiple legislatures like in Rome before, when it was a republic or whatever. The prerogative, the power, as long as it's a public justice, the juridical question, then the state can put people to death. So this is column A. The church was always fine with it. It's in the Bible. It's in Augustine. It's in all those guys. And literally what it means is it's not just, you don't have to be defending anybody's life. The state could put heretics to death, as they did sometimes in the Holy Roman Empire. State could put extreme sex perverts to death. State could put murderers to death, capital punishment. State could put traitors to death who hadn't even killed anyone yet. So it had nothing to do with saving lives. It had to do with, there's a principle upon which it's not private citizens, it's the state qua the state has the prerogative to intend to put certain bad elements to death. And it's based on a principle of retributivism, right? Meaning the state can intend to kill people because it has nothing to do with the consequence or an outcome, saving someone's life, because of a principle of keeping things even, retributivism. Now, the second instance when the church has taught that one human being can kill another is when it's not an intentional killing. That doesn't mean you don't know the outcome. This is when the principle of double effect kicks in. It is, unlike column A, it is open to private individuals. If someone breaks into your house at night and is about to kill you, raises a knife to kill you, your family members, say anyone else, any other innocent life, your kids have a sleepover, your neighbors, when their arm is raised, right? This is not intending a killing. When their arm is raised, you can shoot at their center of mass, shoot at their heart or their head. Under the principle of double effect, you are attempting to stop them from killing you. And it's, the one end is justified by the other. And you're not intending it, even though it is an unintended certain outcome. So it doesn't mean you have to shoot at their leg or some girl cop flitty thing like that, shoot at their arm or try to blow the knife out of their hand. And it's okay if you kill them only by accident. You can know that you're going to kill them because you're aiming at center mass, but you're philosophically not intending to kill them. That's the principle of double effect. Okay. That's what the church has always taught. Now, because JP2 was so high and mighty, by thinking he was smarter than Aquinas, he needed to pepper in more dignity, more subjectivism, and more action theory to Aquinas. He essentially merges the two in this first line of the 97 Catechism revision, which is absolutely wrong. The state can kill when the only practicable way to defend lives. This presupposes, in another place it kind of expresses it, that there is no principle of retributivism by which the state, which holds the prerogative, can intend to kill, right? Meaning the state, first of all, are the two instances where it's always been licit for Christians to kill. Are they pretty clear? Are they? I mean, did I do an adequate job?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, why you can't blend them the way JP2 does is he's saying really, after 1997, he's saying we're not going to acknowledge the principle of retributivism anymore. We're not going to acknowledge that the state is different from private citizens, where the state can intend to kill, private citizens could just do these unintended certain outcome, principle of double effect, self-defenses. And he's going to say, well, the only practical way to defend lives is by killing a guilty accused. The state can still do it, but this is really rare. There are a few major philosophical problems with this. Okay. Number one, the state is still incarcerated, presumably the prisoner that he's talking about killing.
Right.
But, he's saying, well, it's not a supermax prison. Maybe it's a third world country. So number one, this is like a really maybe a super violent murderer who's locked up into a prison. It's a kind of weak prison, so he might get out at some later point. But this doesn't pass muster if the principle of retributivism to allow intended killings is gone. This is not enough like emergency for the PDE, for the principle of double effect to kick in. Unintended killing, right? Because you're like, well, it's kind of a loose, crappily made like Guatemalan prison.
Sure.
That might get away in a year or two.
Yeah.
Principle of double effect is not triggered then.
Yeah, he's not actively killing someone like you gave in the example of breaking into someone's house or something.
Right. He's not going like this.
Right.
Because,
right.
The principle of double effect, by the way, like if someone breaks into your house as a Catholic, the state of the law kind of reflects this. But as a Catholic, if the guy is, for whatever reason, you don't shoot him when he's doing this to you or your wife or your kids, but he puts it down and maybe the Holy Spirit overtakes him and he puts it down and he's walking away, the principle of double effect is not triggered. So that's how quickly it kicks in your ability to kill him and kicks out. Like if you think he's leaving and you're convinced of that in your intellect, in your phantasms, you're not allowed to shoot this dude in the back. I mean, it's one thing if he's going to get a bigger knife or something, but so think about this now. JP2 says there's no longer a principle of retributivism where the state can intend to kill. The only time he can kill is basically applying the principle of double effect, not to private individuals, but to the state. That doesn't work. What JP2 is saying, he doesn't even know he's saying this. And, you know, his mind was going, but he's probably being influenced by those liberal cardinals who surrounded him or whatever. But he's basically saying, so there's no principle of retributivism that makes the state killing all guilty prisoners just, whether you kill 100% of them or 0 of them. So you can only kill based on the principle of double effect, but it's not actually triggered here. So you're actually, JP2 is saying to go murder these people by his own premises.
Right, yeah.
In a third world prison, if I'm doing a citizen's arrest and it's a week incarceration, you know, and I just build a little weak prison for this guy, and I think he might kill me if I fall asleep, I'm not allowed to just shoot him because the PDE doesn't kick in. Yeah. So if I made this clear, the admixture of the two illicit types of killing with this sort of mongrelized version, the one version that JP2 says in 1997, that's actually not licit at all.
Yeah. So he raises the bar as to when it's possible. And then what you're saying is the example he gives doesn't meet the bar that he set himself.
Yeah, well, he blends the line between a state being able to intend a killing and a private individual not being able to intend a killing, but only kill in self-defense when it's emergent, exigent. And he gives some elements of category 1 and some elements of category 2, and the merger sort of new doctrine he makes up because he thinks he's smarter than Thomas would qualify as murder. Because there's no principle. You're literally, what he's talking about is a third world country, low max prison. Go get this guy from his cell because he might eventually get away. Get him out of his handcuffs. He's not in the middle of killing anyone. And I guess it's such a crummily built prison in such a poor country. Now we're going to put this guy to death. Well, that's not wrong. You can put any guilty accused to death because in principle it's right. You know?
Yeah.
If he is one of the ones, but JP2 thinks there is no principle of retributivism. JP2 thinks that he is enabling the state to do this or making licit a third world country to do this because, well, eventually it might save lives. But the principle of double effect has the principle of double effect has a higher bar than JP2 thinks. And the prerogative killings of the state is a lower bar than JP2 thinks. And because he thinks that all principle of retributivism killings don't acknowledge the subjectivity of the guilty accused. Yeah. So he's just wrong. I'm just showing how I don't think it's so much phenomenology. I think it's the personalism. And really, there's a lot of hubris in this. I know he's supposed to be a very holy guy, but to think you're smarter than Thomas Aquinas is something none of us should do. I'm not saying that he was God, but he's the smartest guy ever. And if you try to outthink him, you're going to be wrong, and there's hubris in it, and it's going to lead to issues like Christopher West. I think pretty ably, I've looked into this before, pretty ably intoning what JP2 is saying in Love and Responsibility, saying it's wrong to have a baby just for the sake of the baby. I mean, sometimes you have sex more for the secondary end of unitivity or whatever, but it's never wrong to have maybe more clinical relations with your wife just if you want a baby. That can't be wrong. And JP2 followed through to the entailments of the inclusion of his entailments. He seems to say that's wrong, and he says that it's wrong to kill a guilty accused on the principle of retributivism, or he thinks that it's okay to kill. He thinks that the principle of double effect would kill a third world country prisoner, and it doesn't. So it's leading to some really bad philosophy. Leads to some really absurd outcomes, and they come from JP2 personalism.
And so I'm kind of just want to like talk a lot about his like influence. He seemed to have the Catholic Church as it stands today. He seems to have put the safeguards around where you can wiggle a little bit and where you can't, right? So he kind of messed around with the death penalty a little bit, and now here comes Pope Francis and says it's inadmissible, right? So he gives wiggle room there. But again, I just, the reason we're doing the show is because he's so influential. Like, why are you doing a show about a guy who died like 21 years ago? But on something like the ordination of women, right? Because I was thinking about this yesterday. Pope, like the people who, the Pope Francis, the people who think Pope Francis is super based, the clip that they always pull is the 60 Minutes interview, right? Where the lady's like, if there's a little American girl that thinks she could be Pope someday, what would you say? Pope Francis says no, right? The church has spoken on this, it's no. And in my mind, when he says the church has spoken on this, I think he's referring to the document that JP2 wrote, Ordinatus Sacerdotales, something like that, right?
Yeah, so Sacerdotales,
yeah, he's so influential that like it still rings today. Even the encyclical Magnificat Humanitas, right? The safeguarding of the human person, right, is the subject of that encyclical, the newest one that Pope Leo wrote. So like he's still, I mean, the man died 21 years ago, but his thought is still super duper influential, not just in like American, like I mentioned earlier, American Catholic and podcasters, but like in the institutional church itself, his thought is still like alive. And well, I was talking to a seminarian. I honestly was asking him like, hey, what are you reading in seminary? I thought I was gonna hear like Ronner. Honestly, I'm like, oh, this guy's gonna say Ronner or whatever, Balthasar. But he said like, no, just a lot of Wojtyła. Like that's what they have us reading, and it's important to know what water it is that we're swimming in as Catholics.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we opened, right? I don't think they're reading Ronner anymore. I think they're reading JP2 and a lot of JP2 adjacent stuff, and that's bad enough. I really think it's bad enough. I mean, I really think he gave a faithful right-wing flair. I don't know what's going on with my hair right now, but he gave a faithful
I don't have that problem.
High and tight is so much better for the summer. But he JP2 gave a faithful kind of tint or flair to the spirit of Vatican II, and I think that's what's more pervasive now than Ronner. And there's a lot of errors that come from it. So, and we've talked about some of them today. We talked about a lot of stuff that influenced Francis today. So, I don't know. I think this was a useful exercise. I don't know. Do you think we answered the question? Because we have people wanting to jump in.
Yeah, no, sure. They jump on in.
Alrighty. Okay, so if you'd like to join the show, there is a pinned comment in chat. So feel free to use that link to join, to ask a question, make a comment, or yell at Tim. I don't know which one of those applies, but we have annulment proof to the show. Let me add him in. Are you there, John? I don't know if he's prepared to join in or not. Okay, let me remove him for now. And we're going to go to Philippe, friend of the channel.
Hey, he's probably making supper like I was doing.
What's up,
Philippe? Forgot to jump back. Hey, how's it going? How's it going? I'm enjoying your conversation for sure. I was getting a little intimidated because it's like I technically have philosophy as part of my degree, but with some of the early stuff you guys are talking about, it's like, oh man, I'm not as good as philosophy that I thought. And then you guys started getting into double effect, and I'm like, wait, no. I actually studied this. I actually know this pretty well. Like you were going through, it's like I actually understand the double effect pretty well, and that was because when I was in school, we studied Veritatis Splendor, and that's the thing that's kind of throwing me off about this because it's like, oh, you guys are just talking about. The problem with JP2 being in the universities, and I mean, I studied at Steubenville, so I'm pretty sure a lot of clergy and religious are going through there. But the thing that's throwing me off is like, well, Veritatis Splendor was awesome. That's how I learned double effect. They taught me double effect through that encyclical from John Paul II, understood to be sort of co-written by Benedict XVI back when he was Ratzinger, etc. And so that's how I learned double effect. And then almost shortly after that, I went to, Pope Francis's, I don't know why I can't think of it right now because it's such a big one, but Amors Laetitia.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I went back and I read that and I'm like, oh, this is a nice little encyclical. And then I get to the one chapter that just sounds that everything just sounds funky. And I'm like, wait, this, based on what I read on Veritatis Splendor, this sounds really weird. It sounds really weird, some of this justification that I'm hearing. But so I was kind of curious with Jordan, have you studied Veritatis Splendor? Because that would really help out. Like, I mean, at least for me it did. But like the double effect and things like that, it's like it can help out with like those dumb questions where it's like people are on the train tracks and whether you pull the lever or not, and how many people, whatever.
Trolley car problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Trolley car problems. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't studied that, but isn't that like Tim? Wouldn't you say that's like one of his best documents, JP2?
Yeah, it's a great. What's the philosophical term? It's a great safeguard against the need for Amors Laetitia, because that's where JP2 lays out if they're, they trolley car problem, they trolley car their way, the Lavender Mafia, to Amors Laetitia, where they're like, there's this one in a millions time where maybe innocent people would need divorce and remarriage. Mm-hmm. And JP2 really safeguarded against it by just saying, look, if you're divorced and remarried and you did that when you were away from the church and now you're back to the church, you don't have to split up your new family. If you had like a kid with your second spouse, your adulterous second union, just live Josephite, live as brother and sister, and boom, you got it. Get different bedrooms, bring a bishop into the the internal forum, and you're okay. So they were Francis had to work around the workaround, and with Amors Laetitia. So I think that is a great JP2 document, and and it was all sound philosophically, and there's no problems. It wasn't overly lenient by allowing that. That's the main thing I know from Veritatis Splendor. But I think it's a philosophically sound document. Yes. Okay.
So yeah, I guess I would just recommend that because I did study it, and I guess the other thing I was interested. I mean, I don't even think we need to bring it up because I think in the past people have brought up the idea of infinite dignity or whatever, but you've kind of pointed out that I think in the past you've said that actually kind of JP2, like, because the infinite dignity is just kind of so silly and kind of out of left field, whereas the JP2 thing, it's actually like he should have known better. Like I would think, like when he made these death penalty exceptions that turned out to actually be morally wrong when you think about it. Whereas, I think Pope Francis is the one who introduced infinite dignity. And I guess I was going to ask, is this kind of an outgrowth of that? But it's just like, well, if JP2 is bad enough, I don't know why we would need to relitigate that. Because I think he's already spoken. Unless you have any interest in that, Jordan, or whatever. But you know what I'm talking about? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
okay.
for sure. Yeah, I again, like, to me, he's just so influential, because like that the dignity talk just becomes it's like that's the thing you can count on every bishop in every public statement saying, every USCC bishop is going to mention human dignity at some point, so they can kind of play around with that language, which again, like Tim says, like you get something wrong in the beginning of the math problem, small problems in the beginning end up with big problems at the end. And I think that, I think Tim did a good job of demonstrating that today.
Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, it seemed like a design flaw that every bishop, because the three of us just agreed, every bishop will say dignity as if it means you can't kill someone, or dignity in another JP2 personalist sense, as if it's using your spouse to just have kids. No, neither of those are. Just because we can conceive of having sex in a more unitive way with what, John Farrell would call NFP, and that's also illicit because it's non-contradictory of the telos. And just because a state doesn't need to put someone to death, it's kind of up to the individual rulers whether or not they're going to use the death penalty. That doesn't mean that you're outstripping the dignity of the person in the former example in either category. When you're strict, when you're we're going to put you to death, not an affront to your dignity. It's not an affront to your dignity if your spouse wants to have sex with you in this instance, just to have kids, because in both cases you're doing the right thing with the right reason, for the right reason. And JP2 personalism seems to navigate around that and run squarely into the wrong answer. Yeah. So
okay. Yeah. Sorry.
well, thanks. Anyway, that's a good comment. Thanks a lot. We'll see you maybe next show, brother. Thanks for the remark.
Oh,
and
yeah,
if you guys have, okay, cool. God bless you, bro.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we'll take. Are there any others?
We have John. John, are you there? I'm gonna add him. John, calling John.
Got to bring up the set. Got to have my weekly sex talk with John. What would life be if I didn't get to talk about sex with this guy?
That crucifix is insane, by the way. I'm sure he chose that for a reason.
Yeah.
That's something.
Wow.
Well,
I'm just looking at it.
He was here and now he is not here. So I think he was our last caller. So I don't know where John went.
I'm sure he'll be here next show.
Well, if I don't get to talk about sex with John, I've never met in real life, then I just don't feel right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't even want to go fully into that, because I think the death penalty is in some ways more demonstrative rather of the errors of personalism, but I think it's also demonstrative that what you said, that Chris West and his wife were getting scrupulous because they were using sex properly for, and they're like, oh, we better not do it. You run into the wrong solution to problems, don't you, when you have the wrong philosophy, even if it's just slightly off?
Yeah. It's super, like, it just seems like what you said about the Ratzinger, like they just got bored with Aristotelianism, and it led to issues. And again, like I don't, you probably agree with, I hope you agree with me here, like better Wojtyła that the seminarian is reading than Ronner, right? Or Kung or these more like lefty guys. Like he was centered left, is how you would characterize him, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the accelerationist in me wants to say no, but the realist in me wants to say, yeah, of course. Because accelerationism, I think the problems with JP2 and Ratzinger is these sort of crypto left guys that got categorized as right wingers. It takes people a longer time. I have close friends that love Ratzinger and love Wojtyła, and they just are like, I just don't get why you wouldn't go after. Well, because in some ways they're wolves in sheep's clothes, philosophically. I'm not talking about whether they're a saint or whatever. But yes, the realist in me is like, well, it's less nefarious stuff than Kuhn or Ronner or Skilevix or whatever else people would have been reading, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think he even now we're just talking, but I think he even disciplined Kung, right, during his papacy. I think he said he could lecture or something like that for a bit.
He was like, I mean, when you read Windswept House, you get a good sense for this. He'll like discipline one of them and then like elevate or give an award to their buddy the next day. Yeah. And you're like, why are you doing this? And the main character in Windswept House puzzles over it. The hero is like, why does he do one thing I mean, he did have a neurodegenerative disorder. So that could be some of it. It could be more of it, maybe than less. But he's pretty hard as a thinker. He's rather hard to defend. Well, No, I think he's hard to say, well, this guy really had a program where he knew where he was going, and him as a consistent mind is hard to defend. He's not always wrong, but he's not like always on the left side of things. But he's just real hit and miss. But where he's wrong, it always reduces to this obsession with personalism, with touchy-feely crap, with a misapplied definition of dignity and the like.
I think this is a good way to end the show. I appreciate you just making a whole show out of me just having some random questions. So thanks, man.
Yeah. Well, great. It was an amazing, actually, I think it's a great clarifier on two of the big issues that two of the big problems that do stem from JP2. Excuse you, Hattie or Steph.
There was just.
Are you going to blame it on the baby?
Yeah.
She's like, I hate you. No, we can go with that story. It was the baby.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Jordan. You always ask the best questions, prompt the best shows. I was more harried today. In some ways, I felt like I gave a more clear answer right when you were giving it yesterday. And sometimes the second iteration is not as good. Hopefully that was clear enough for people.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll let us know in the comments.
Yeah. John will still be saying, I'm a heretic for I don't even know what I'm defending his position here. I wonder
what you would have said about today's show, because we are kind of going at the guy that he has the most problems with, it seems like.
Yeah. Enemy of my enemy is my friend. All right. Well, God bless you guys all. I want to remind everyone, if you're looking to get out of your blue state, get to a red state, go to www.realestateforlife.org. And if you are looking for a way to shore up your personal finances, go to St. Joseph Partners, buy precious metals, silver and gold. Today, they're Catholic people. They sell you, morally extracted precious ores from the earth, and it's a great way to make sure that your family is financially safe. Okay, God bless you all, and hopefully you enjoyed the philosophy lesson. Thank you, Jordan. Thanks for everything you do.
No problem. See y'all.
Peace.